Welcome in to the Scoop Podcast, Inside Carolina's number one UNC football recruiting podcast and the number one recruiting podcast in the world. I'm your host, Ross Martin. As always, I'm joined by Don Callahan. But first, before we get into Don, I want to tell you to rate, review, and subscribe. Go on to Spotify, go on to Apple, give us a rating, give us a review, and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to Inside Carolina's YouTube channel. We're putting all our podcasts on YouTube, including a lot of interviews during the season, basketball, football. We have so much content on YouTube. So make sure to subscribe to YouTube as well as our podcast channels. Don, massive podcast today. How are you feeling? What's going on?
I am trying to conjure up all the energy I have for this podcast because I hear that I am low energy.
Nah, you're great last podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm here in the office. We were recording at 12:48 on Wednesday afternoon. It's important to remember that time and date if you listen to this in the future. Let's get into it, Don. We have a huge show coming off a massive official visit weekend. Two commitments to talk about: Deuce Caldwell, Justin Kanyuk. Kanyuk? How do you say it?
I think it's Canuck or I've heard both. Canuck.
Okay, great. That really clarifies things. And then we'll get into the big official visit weekend by talking about Marcus Allen, Dalen Everett, Omarion Hampton, quarterback Connor Harrell, Caden Helms, Canuck, and of course, Big Daddy Travis Shaw from Greensboro, Grimsley. Also, I have some brief notes on a couple things from Don's mock class, which was released yesterday. If you're not an Inside Carolina subscriber, the mock class is one of the great things that Don does, and features a lot of great information and intel from what he's hearing about UNC's class. And we'll also drop some notes on Andre Green, Jake Pope, a couple of the recruits, and kind of what's going on as the ebbs and flows of UNC's signing class. And then we have a special new segment we're going to preview today. We'll talk about that at the end of the podcast. An idea I have, ripping
Is
off other podcasts, non-sports related.
Yeah.
I think it's a fun segment we're going to add to our podcast along with the top five. We're not going to do a top five now. We're going to wait for the next podcast. And of course, that's because we're recording this a week earlier because of all the big news. All right, Dom, you ready?
Yeah. So please, though, the last top five was what your top five wants for this class. Doesn't necessarily have to be a specific recruit. It could be just a general idea, position, whatever it may be. Let your imagination be your guide. We have a couple of submissions, but would like to get a lot more. So you can submit by PMing me on the message board, Don Callahan, or Twitter at Don Callahan IC, or email don@insidecarolina.com.
Awesome. So your top five.
Should I give out my phone number and have people call me?
Yeah, give out the subscribers. You get annoyed about people asking you questions on the message boards.
I never get annoyed.
Your number. Never get. Yeah, right. All right. So wait. Sorry. Top five wants and needs for the 2022 class. All right, let's get into it, Don. Deuce Caldwell committed to North Carolina on Friday. He is a linebacker, kind of played some safety in high school from Malden, South Carolina. Not a super high-ranked kid, 1,086 in the nation and the 113th ranked linebacker, number 16 player in the state of South Carolina. Don, go briefly over his recruitment and then why he picked UNC, and we'll get to his game as well.
So, I mean, his recruitment was pretty simple. I mean, he started to gain some steam this spring. Picked up some offers, including North Carolina. Obviously, there were a couple of other schools like Clemson and a few others who had expressed interest. You know, everyone worried about Clemson because obviously Malden, where he lives, is very Clemson area.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, if Clemson would have offered, that could have changed things a little bit. He attended a camp there. And along with a couple other linebackers, those two linebackers scored offers. He did not, which he's the type of guy who is more about he's going to produce on the field. He's not going to blow you away with his 40 time. He's not going to blow you away with his measurables, but he's just an absolute player. Every report I've seen from camps and 7-on-7s with him and it talk about just how much of a player, how many, interceptions, coverage, that sort of thing about him. And so basically, he took an official visit to North Carolina in the middle of the month. It was a midweek official visit. During that visit, he committed. He didn't announce it publicly until a week later. I think he wanted to kind of make sure that was what he wanted to do and those sort of things. And that was really it. He canceled all other visits. He did have an official visit scheduled with UCF, but that was scheduled for the weekend prior to his actual announcement. That didn't happen. He says he's good with North Carolina. He's going to stick to North Carolina, and he's happy to be a Tar Heel.
Awesome. I don't think I did his height and weight. 6'1", 210. So do you think he's pretty underranked? Like, will he go up, you think, or do you think he's going to be a guy we look back on that, this guy was a little underranked?
So I think it depends on your criteria. And so the 247 Sports model is actually based off the NFL draft. And, where, a 5-star is supposed to be a first-round draft pick and a 4-star is supposed to be a guy who gets drafted. If you look at his measurables, they just don't match up to a guy who typically gets drafted. But we've seen plenty of exceptions, especially for a guy who is just a ball player. So, yeah, I mean, he could potentially be better than his ranking. But I'll tell you this, I know North Carolina is, and I guess you could say this about every commit, but this in particular, I know that UNC was kind of crossing their fingers during that week when he camped at Clemson and made a couple of visits to Clemson, and we're super happy when he came out. Not because obviously I'm sure Caldwell himself wasn't happy, but they were happy for selfishly that that Clemson didn't offer, because they knew that basically was a huge roadblock that didn't exist.
And Clemson has that other another linebacker commitment from North Carolina, right?
Yeah. Oh no. He Jalen Walker committed to Georgia.
Did he ever commit to Clemson?
No. Everyone thought he was.
Okay.
Everyone thought he was going to commit to Clemson, and then something magically happened, and he ended up at Georgia.
Don, what's going on with your shirt right now? You got a little 2 shirts on?
Yeah, I don't want, in case I sweat, got a little undershirt underneath to catch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that you're going to give me some really tough questions, and I'm going to sweat them out. So I had to make sure I had an undershirt on.
There you go. Always prepared.
So I'm still looking fresh. You know what I mean?
The recruiting takes are so hot. You gotta wear.
I took a. You didn't notice? Shaved for you. Took a shower. Did my hair a little bit.
The next commitment, offensive lineman Justin. I'm gonna go Kanyuk.
Okay.
Which is
I should have asked him. I meant to a bunch of times, but.
All due respect, a pretty weird ass last name. Sorry for cussing. Wow. I apologize to the kids.
Whoa.
And people everywhere. All right, 6'5", 290 from Bethlehem Catholic High School in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Ranked outside the top of 1,000. He's 1,031. The 103rd ranked offensive tackle and the 23rd ranked player in Pennsylvania. Don, this kind of happened quickly because he took 2 visits, right? Back to back?
Well, so he took a visit earlier. Well, he took a visit during the quarantine before he became a true UNC target.
Okay.
And then he came back in the very beginning of June, worked out for Stacey Searles, offensive line coach, and scored a scholarship offer. And then that last week of June, before the last weekend, the big official visit weekend, the coaches reached out to him and said, "Hey, we want to bring you in for an official visit," and he accepted, and that's what he did this past weekend, which led to his commitment on Sunday.
Interesting. So, if you look at his offer list, he doesn't have any Power 5 offers. Going through it here. He has Virginia, but he doesn't have Pittsburgh, no Penn State.
Yeah, so he went. Maryland offered. So he's a little bit of a late bloomer, I guess, because the Maryland and Virginia offers and North Carolina offer all came in June after those schools were able to actually see him in person. I believe he did a couple other workouts. I believe he did a workout at Virginia. I don't know what happened in Maryland. He also, Florida was interested and didn't offer, and Penn State had him in for, I think, a camp or a workout, and they didn't offer, but they were interested.
Yeah, so my question here, I mean, obviously a big guy, the size is there, he's got good weight, good length, and UNC wants him, and you got to want to trust what the UNC staff wants. But, I mean, what's the deal with him kind of maybe reaching? I mean, there's tons of offensive linemen. I mean, he's the 109th ranked offensive tackle. There's got to be players better than him, whether they're committed to other teams or just available in the region to kind of at least test the waters. Why take a commitment now from a guy like this who could potentially be there in a couple months? Like, why rush locking this guy down instead of going for a high-ranked player, and also knowing that Rice is still out there?
Well, they'll still take Rice, so this doesn't really affect Rice at all. But it's kind of like that. It's like this weird sort of catch-22 within recruiting, whereas you want your staff to do the evaluations, to take guys that they want, but then as a fan, you want your staff to take guys who are highly ranked, and not really understanding that whether subconsciously or consciously, the rankings are basically based off of what the college coaches do, who they offer, and that sort of thing. So, I mean, what it comes down to is this was a guy that, Stacey Searles obviously saw on film and worked out individually in just a one-on-one scenario and liked what he saw. Obviously, they took measurements. I'm sure they timed him in the 40 and whatever it may be, and just liked what they saw. And so, do you take a guy that you like a lot, or do you hold off because the rankings don't match up with your evaluation? And I think for a coach, you gotta trust your own eye, and believe in that. And I know it's difficult for the fans to kind of accept, but that's what they get paid to do. Because really, if we're just going off of rankings, you and I could be coaches in North Carolina and just recruit off the 24/7 rankings.
Yeah. I mean, you see, obviously Stacey Searles worked him out. You don't want to question that. I just think I'm asking questions. I'm sure a lot of fans kind of think this way too. That there's no need to take that commitment now, knowing there's a lot of stuff out there. But maybe they found a diamond in the rough, and maybe thought that he's going to blow up in the next 4 or 5 months. It was concerning he doesn't have a Pitt offer. A lot of schools in his area, you would think they would offer first and be on him. But Justin Kanyuk becomes a Tar Heel and is the second commitment for the Tar Heels. UNC has 7 commitments now. When we come back, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive into the official visits over UNC's time UNC's time last week, and then get into the mock class. But first, I want to talk to you about Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-shirt.com, the one-stop shop for everything you need UNC apparel-wise, right on Franklin Street and online at JohnnyT-shirt.com. They're a great podcast sponsor, and by helping them, you help us, and it gives us the opportunity to do these kind of podcasts, the different special podcasts we do. So make sure you go to Johnny T-shirt and JohnnyT-shirt.com, and remember, all Inside Carolina subscribers get 10% off their order with the promo code found on the Inside Carolina premium message boards, the Tar Pit and the UNC basketball message boards. Get a T-shirt. Get a couple T-shirts, sweatshirt, your tailgate gear, little trinkets, anything you need UNC-wise, get at Johnny T-shirt and JohnnyT-shirt.com. We'll be right back with more of The Scoop on Inside Carolina Podcast Network. Welcome back to The Scoop, and thanks for staying on. Guys, we had a commercial break. Took a little longer for us because Don got some breaking news, and by the time you're listening to this, UNC has another commitment in the form of Marcus Allen, a safety prospect, 6'2", 165 from Marietta, Georgia. We got news he's committing while we're recording. And so by the time you're listening to this, UNC's added another commit to the class in the form of Marcus Allen, who visited UNC officially last weekend. Don, you want to take the floor here?
Yeah, so he kind of hinted that a commit was coming. I believe it was Monday night. And so he reached out and said that he's going to be committing today, which is Wednesday at 3. That time has changed a couple of times. But talked on the phone, went through the committing to North Carolina. He actually was, if you are a regular reader of the Weekly Scoop, he was within the Strong Vibes section. There's a couple
Mm.
other guys in that Strong Vibes section, so check it out. I'm not going to name any more names, but anyway, this is a kid that North Carolina really likes. He plays at one of the stronger programs in the Atlanta area. He plays corner. He also starts a corner for Hustle Inc., which is one of the top 7-on-7 teams in the entire nation. It's obviously an Atlanta-based 7-on-7 team, but North Carolina plans on kind of moving him to safety, but maybe kind of he obviously has the tools to play some man coverage, so they can kind of move him to corner or nickel if need be. This is a guy who spent, like a lot of guys, spent June officially visiting schools, officially visited Georgia Tech, Auburn, and North Carolina. North Carolina was the last visit, and but that was a school that he really liked from the very beginning. So this
Yeah. So
doesn't make a whole lot of
why did he
sense.
pick UNC? What was the reasoning? Who recruited him? Why did he pick UNC over Georgia Tech, where I think his brother is? Things like that.
Yeah. So obviously I talked to him, but I haven't gone through the interview. Sometimes I forget what is told to me until I go back and listen to it. But just because my mind's all over the place, my mind's on the next question. But anyway, um, he has mentioned this actually before, that North Carolina was a dream school for him. It was just a school that for whatever reason he liked growing up. He's a kid who really values education, which is kind of reflective in his brother. Originally went to Notre Dame, and then when he transferred back home, he transferred to Georgia Tech. So the family really values education, so that appealed to him. He really hit it off with Jay Bateman, North Carolina's defensive coordinator, and then just he kind of had the feeling, okay, I really like this school. These are all the things that are on my checklist that North Carolina matches, and he headed into the official visit thinking, okay, can I live here for 4 years?
Mm.
And the answer obviously was yes.
All right, awesome. Marcus Allen becomes UNC's next commitment. That makes it
7,
eight,
8.
eight for UNC.
Wow, I'm
So
losing count.
it's starting to add up here. You got Deuce Caldwell, linebacker. UNC added edge rusher and Bo Atkinson, and of course Justin Kanyuk last weekend as well. Marcus Allen becomes a Tar Heel and commits to UNC on Wednesday. So by the time you're listening to it, he is a Tar Heel. You just encountered some breaking news, a little inside the biz there with Mr. Don Callahan. All right, we're going to run through the official visits. We've already talked about Allen. We've already talked about Canuck. Dalen Everett, Don, briefly. There's been some strong vibes with him and UNC, but what's going on there? I mean, he's made a couple of visits now. He's a big-time, almost borderline elite type cornerback prospect with great size. What's going on with Dalen Everett, who's from the Virginia Beach area, plays at IMG Academy with him and UNC.
All right, so just to be clear, he's not on the strong vibe section
He's
of.
on my strong vibe section.
He's on Ross's.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a guy who he took an overnight visit to Clemson earlier in the month. He also officially visited Georgia and Florida State and North Carolina within about a 10-day span. He kind of went into this thinking, okay, one school's kind of going to stand out, but he came out of it thinking, oh man, I really like all these schools, and it's actually going to be a lot harder for me to make a decision. He goes to IMG Academy. He's originally from the Tidewater area, which has put North Carolina in a great spot because of Dre Bly. But IMG Academy, I believe they have to report back to campus on July 19th. It just would make a whole lot of sense for him and his family if he were to make his collegiate decision prior to reporting back to IMG. That he hasn't said that's going to be the case, but that's something that I think I would watch for with him.
Okay. What's his time frame again for committing?
Well, so originally it was the summer, but coming out of the North Carolina official visit, he said that he's now not too sure and might need to make some visits during the season. I think he's just a little burnt out and overwhelmed, and that once he kind of talks things over with his parents and other people within his inner circle, that he might come back to deciding in the summer.
And UNC will hold a spot for him, I'm assuming. What's the cornerback recruiting looking like in general?
Well, I mean, I think he's ranked 40th in the nation. So this is a kid that's right outside the 5-star range. But yeah, North Carolina's going to hold a spot for him regardless. I mean, he's just an absolute stud.
Yes, they'll have him if he commits. Be him and Tayon Holloway.
Hmm.
Would be their cornerback haul. Okay, moving right along. Omarion Hampton. A lot of stuff on the message boards about the running back target. He visited Penn State last weekend. He canceled his Ohio State visit and visited UNC this weekend officially. He's been on campus a bunch in June. He's right down the road, I believe in Johnson County, right?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Tommy Ashley territory.
Yeah, that's the Tommy Ashley land. Amarion Hampton, running back prospect, 2022 class. Let me get some stats here for you. As it loads, 6 foot, 215, high ranked kid, 141 in the nation, number 12 running back in the nation. Don, let's dive in here. This seems to get a lot of interest on the message boards, particularly with him and Petaway kind of going, vying for certain spots at certain schools, and definitely both top UNC targets.
So coming out of well, let's take a step back. Ohio State fills up at. Let me take a step back even further than that.
Whew, okay.
Talking to his dad earlier in the month, they had wanted to figure out a way to officially visit North Carolina this month. They had scheduled 4 official visits for all 4 weekends in June to other schools, but kind of realized early on in the month that they wanted to make this decision during the summer. And in order to do that, they needed to take an official visit to North Carolina. That wasn't looking all that promising for North Carolina's and his schedule. So they took a bunch of unofficial visits to North Carolina. Even the one time, I think when it was after the Auburn official visit, immediately coming from the airport, they stopped by North Carolina, who were having a camp to kind of support some of his teammates who were participating in that camp. But anyway, so then we go to next week, Ohio State. They land a running back commitment. They only want one running back commitment, so they canceled the official visit, which was music to UNC's ears. And Hampton immediately scheduled that official visit for this past weekend. There's a lot of other stuff that's involved with Penn State. Steve Wilfong did a lot of great reporting on that. I'm not going to get into that here. I did touch on that in the weekly scoop, but essentially what you need to know coming out of the official visit to North Carolina, he has set, I think it's July 23rd as his announcement date. We have the story up on Inside Carolina to check it out to double check me. But he's going to announce his commitment via CBS HQ on the 23rd, and North Carolina obviously is one of the finalists.
What's going on with him at Penn State and Wilfong's reporting?
You have to go back and read the reporting.
Okay, well, I mean, we're on a podcast here talking about UNC football recruiting. It'd be nice to know. All right, Amarion Hampton. Now, this is the big question that I have. Would UNC take both Amarion Hampton and George Petaway?
I think so. But here's the thing that you got to remember.
Both
and I think,
won't come.
Well, there is definitely a chance they could. But fans just will not accept this idea. Is that what happens is, one, it makes it harder for North Carolina to get the other when one commits. Because now schools are going to say, whoa, they have this guy, blah, 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 and they're going to kind of use it against them. Also, it doesn't look as appealing. Yes, running backs are completely comfortable with being a part of a multi-running back class, but, everybody wants to be the guy. And so it's not as appealing. Second, take Penn State, for example. If one of those kids, Penn State's recruiting both of them, and there's a couple other schools are in the same boat. Florida, for example, same way, recruiting both those kids. But let's just take Penn State. If one of those kids commits to North Carolina, Penn State's going to go all in on the other, and the same thing with Florida. And so it makes things a lot harder. I'm not saying it won't happen. North Carolina would definitely welcome both guys on their commitment list. I'm just saying that everybody who's counting on these chicks, we've seen this in the past. Evan Pryor. I mean, how short are people's memories? Don't you remember Evan Pryor from last year? When we went through basically the same thing. I mean, once North Carolina, I can't remember who it was that was committed at the time, but once they got a commitment, Evan Pryor, North Carolina kind of fell off a little bit for him at that point.
When's Petaway deciding?
Petaway has initially, he said he wanted to wait until the season. Then he has toyed with the idea of committing during the summer. I think ultimately he's going to wait until the season.
Who's better?
I mean, that's a matter of opinion. I personally like Petaway more.
They're both really good though.
Yeah, I mean, you're splitting hairs. I mean, you know, you're comparing two top 4-star running backs. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And they're different style running backs. Petaway is more of, elusive all-purpose guy. Hampton's more of a downhill power back. Yeah, I just like Petaway. I like what I've seen in obviously his film, although he's not playing great competition, but he dominates in all the camps and 7-on-7s. I love his work ethic. I love he plays with a chip on his shoulder. I love all that stuff about him.
Love it. Have you been following the zebra cobra stuff?
I haven't, but my wife has. Why? Has someone been bit?
Apparently, there's like breaking animal control officer here at the scene confirms a snake spotted on the porch this afternoon is the zebra cobra that's on the
Uh-oh.
loose. Officers are discussing getting snake traps because the snake may be going in a crack between the porch and foundation.
Mm.
My favorite part
Mm-mm-mm.
about this is all these serious journalists are covering this because these things get so many clicks.
Well, it's like the what was it? The tiger that was loose in Texas.
I mean, it's everybody's. I mean, this stuff gets so many clicks and draws so many traffic. I mean, there's cops here at this person's house. I mean, it's funny. It's a freaking zebra cobra loose in North Raleigh,
Yeah.
loose in suburbia. All right, let's move along here. Good stuff there on Amarion Hampton. Will be interesting to follow. I mean, yeah, I mean, you got Amarion Hampton and George Petaway, two elite, kind of high, high 4-star type prospects. It would suck to not get either, so you hope to get one, but ideally you get both. So see what happens.
All right.
All right,
Next guy, Connor Harrell.
All you, Don. Take it.
All right. So he's a quarterback from Alabama. He went undefeated. Well, his team, Thompson, went undefeated, won the state championship in the highest classification in Alabama. North Carolina offered him just before June, and he took three total official visits, including North Carolina this past weekend. Also officially visit Arizona State and officially visit Northwestern. There is an unofficial visit to Michigan, kind of snuck in there also. He coming out of the official visit with North Carolina this past weekend, he has set July 4th as his announcement date. Those 4 schools are his finalists.
Okay. Do we feel good about him and UNC?
We'll just have to see if there's
Okay.
going to be fireworks.
Connor, okay, how about this? I mean, if he commits to UNC, is he a guy that is good enough to start at UNC, or is he as a place filler?
I think he's a guy who's good enough to start at UNC.
Okay.
I think though. I mean, it's look at what North Carolina has on their depth chart right now. You know what I mean? And these guys are going to be. I mean, obviously Sam will be gone, but Drake May, Jacoby Criswell, maybe one of those guys transfers if when the other one wins the job after Sam leaves, so that opens things up a little bit. But then you have Ted Hudson, who's in the 23 class, that in-state guy that North Carolina has already or Phil Longo has kind of sunk his teeth into over a year ago and has a really good relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, he's a talented kid. I liked what I saw from him he attended the Showtime camp, which I keep on wanting to call the freak show. He attended the Showtime camp, and I thought he looked good with his placement, showed a good arm, and that sort of thing.
All right, awesome. Connor Harrell, UNC's top quarterback target. All right, Caden Helms, tight end.
All right, so Caden is a guy from Nebraska. He's the first Nebraska prospect that UNC has offered since of the internet era. So UNC was his last of 4 official visits. He also officially visited Arizona State, Miami, Oklahoma. He had an official visit scheduled with Auburn that was supposed to occur between his Oklahoma and UNC official visit, like a midweek official visit, but he canceled that because he didn't want to get any sort of burnout for his North Carolina official visit. All the crystal balls say Oklahoma for him, which makes a whole lot of sense. He's a Midwest kid. But his official visit schedule is as diverse as you're going to find. And he has expressed a desire to kind of see something new, which obviously Oklahoma doesn't exactly offer compared to some of the other schools. I didn't get any sort of great feel one way or the other on where he's kind of leaning. He's going to kind of, and some of that he admitted when I did the post interview with him that he's going to need some time to kind of digest everything and make a decision. And he's a guy also who wants to make a commitment by the end of the summer.
Okay, Caden Helms, good stuff. Moving right along, Big Daddy Travis Shaw, 6'5", 310, Greensboro Grimsley, number 9 ranked prospect, number 1 defensive tackle. What's going on, man? There was just a lot of stuff kind of on social media and the message boards about Shaw. You interviewed him, you talked to him. Let's get an update on Shaw and his recruitment.
Yeah, I saw all of the, I guess, whispers and everything, on social media from the weekend. And so I was kind of surprised when I connected with my sources afterwards and also talked to Shaw himself. It didn't seem like, he had made a commitment. I was told he did not do anything close this past weekend. But he said everything went well. Everything was positive. Definitely read the interview with him afterwards. I believe I was the only one who spoke to him. He he's kind of mentioned in the past that maybe he wants to decide during the summer. He was non-committal on what he wanted to do when I spoke to him. I kind of feel like this could still drag on a little bit. He tries to be deceptive with what he says, and he is successful. So, I mean, we'll just have to see. I mean, Clemson and Georgia are involved, and I talked about that magic that Georgia has. You got to worry about that.
What's the
pixie
magic?
dust, the pixie dust. They sprinkle them on the recruits.
Now, does Clemson not have that magic either?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know who has that magic.
Okay.
I'm just saying. That magic touch. So, I mean, Clemson, you got to always worry about because it's Clemson. I mean, same with Georgia. I mean, and so I mean, these are obviously 3 really good programs that are going to have really good seasons this year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is just me kind of riffing. I'm sure UNC is kind of not upset, but you would hope that coming off that official that they would have really good feelings and maybe even get like a silent commitment from him because it's the last visit going into like a dead period. Now they have kind of wait more and you have more time for Clemson and Georgia to state their case more and increasingly. Is that kind of how you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I just I thought that he kind of had a game plan and that he was going to end up deciding in the summer, and he still may because I mean he's known to kind of he came out with his top 4 a couple of weeks ago, and before that point he had expressed a strong desire to wait until the very end to make a commitment. And then obviously when he came with the top 4, he said, well, now I'm starting to kind of think about maybe doing something this summer. So who knows what's going to happen? My guess is that just, recruits of his caliber with these schools involved typically go into the very end. And that's what we might be in for.
All right. Awesome, Don. Good stuff there. Let's move right along. Pulling up the document here. All right. So those are all the official visits. A couple questions. What's going on with Andre Green?
He took a bunch of visits, as he said, in June, including an official visit to North Carolina. We had an update with his dad following that official visit up on the site. So go check that out. He plans on taking a couple more visits in July. I think Penn State and LSU, I think, are the 2 schools he wants to officially or unofficially visit. And then he wants to narrow it down to a 5 or 6 at the end of July, which will give us a better idea of where things kind of lay, who are the true competitors in this competition. Because, him and his dad are really good about keeping everything quiet. You're not really kind of giving off any sort of hints. Every visit that they go to has been the greatest. Just go look at any. I mean, look at the Florida State one recently, was his most recent one. I mean, you would think Florida State is a leader. I mean, everyone you read, you're going to think that school is a leader. So, I think this could still go in a couple different ways. I know that there's a lot of confidence with North Carolina, and I think UNC makes a whole lot of sense because it's an academic school. He goes to St. Christopher's in Richmond, which is a very prestigious academic school in that area, and location matches up really well. But this is a kid who's literally has gone all over the nation visiting schools. In some cases on his own dime. He made a 3-school trip to Texas A&M, and Oklahoma, on his own dime. So obviously, his family has the means for him to play further away, but location always has some sort of influence on things. So, and I know he has a really good relation with Lonnie Galloway, UNC's wide receivers coach.
All right, that's UNC wide receiver target Andre Green. Now, there was a note in your mock class scoop, not really part of the mock class, but it's a note there about Shaquille Knotts, who has a lot of connections to UNC, and it seems like UNC is pulling away from him. What can you tell us about that,
Yeah.
Doug?
You sound like a real interviewer
Ah,
right there.
no shit, it's my job.
Yeah.
Sorry for cussing
um,
again.
so basically, UNC feels good about its wide receiver depth chart coming out of this coming season, which is what is most greatly affected by this class. They have Tyshawn Chapman committed, so they add some to the slot receiver position, and they kind of feel like if that's it, they're good. But Andre Green, and yes, he's a 4-star, but a lot of people I've talked to believe this is a kid who probably should be a 5-star. That's how talented he is. And playing for a private school in Richmond, Virginia, might not help him so much as far as the rankings are concerned. But he's still a talent and just dominates every camp he's been to. His football film is full of true highlights, unbelievable plays. Anyway, so UNC is like, all right, we can't pass on this kid who's not necessarily in our backyard, but it's not that far away, maybe across the street sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll make room for a kid like that. And everyone kind of views that as like a slight at Shalik Knotts, but and they like Knotts, but I think they would have to have some things open up in order for them to be able to have space for Knotts in this class.
Yeah, I mean, Knott's is ranked higher. Obviously, it seems like they like Andre Green more. Andre Green has a much more national recruitment, whereas Knott's has connections, in the state of North Carolina, and he's a cousin of Gavin Blackwell.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, kick some slop wide receiver out and make room for these more players. Take some scholarships away from guys who aren't going to produce. At this point, you would think they have a general idea of some receivers that are sophomores, maybe juniors, maybe even redshirt freshmen that they don't have it. I got a couple on my mind. I'm not going to say any names, but do that and then add another player.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go there. I'll let you go there,
Oh,
but
no,
that's
sorry.
not necessarily the Mac Brown way. Is to kind of boot guys out, but
Yeah, not winning. He doesn't want to win.
he's won and not done that. So I don't,
Okay, all
I'm
right.
just going to stay away from that sort of stuff. That's Ross territory. I just worry about as far as guys going in, and
Oh, yeah.
so
Cut the fat. All right, let's move along here. Okay. Jake Pope. Well, what's going on, Jake Pope? I know he's making an announcement pretty soon, I believe. The safety target out of Georgia, wrapping up his official visits this month.
Yeah, so he's another one. Took 4 official visits all 4 weekends of June, including one to North Carolina. That was the first one. He has some heavy hitters involved with his recruitment: Alabama, Ohio State, and who am I forgetting? Oh, Notre Dame are the 3 other schools he officially visited, and he had a couple of unofficial visits to nearby Georgia. Nobody knows really if Georgia wants him or just kind of keeping him warm or what's going on with that. So so he's can announce at any moment. He could announce, before you listen to this. But
Pope?
North Carolina is definitely. He tweeted out, heading into this decision mode or something along those lines. So who knows? Does that mean this week, next week? Is he waiting for an edit? I mean, who knows?
And he has one crystal ball pick, and it's for Notre Dame by Tom Loy, your boy.
Tom Loy is a good guy.
He is a good guy. I like Tom
He
Loy a
he
lot.
does a great job on the Notre Dame beat.
There you go. So, what are UNC's chances? They're good or bad? Good or not good?
I think they're good. I gotta feel. I feel like North Carolina is at the very least in the top 3, probably in the top 2, and it wouldn't shock me to see this go UNC's way.
Wow. Okay, and it can happen anytime now.
Anytime.
All right, great. I think that concludes the football portion of our podcast. Now, I want to introduce a new idea and segment that I want to run by Don. Don hasn't really heard much about this,
No.
and it kind of builds on our top five and builds on the kind of the community we're creating here at the Scoop. Um, I mean, I'm taking it from another podcast. One of my favorite podcasts is the Ryan Russillo podcast, and at the end of every podcast, he does life advice,
Oh boy.
and he takes questions on anything on life. Some get very serious. Some are more lighthearted. They range from romantic to friendships to guys being dudes to fitness to health to finance to career. Anything. I mean, day-to-day stuff could be like some social situation or something. And I think it's a great way to kind of create conversation and explore different ways of getting to know our listeners and getting to know Don and I and see let our opinions and kind of personalities show. So we're going to do a new segment, and it may not be every show, but we're going to collect questions from our listeners, and it's going to be called Life Advice with Don and Ross. And you can send your questions to my email.
Uh-oh.
Or direct message me on Inside Carolina, but my email is rossmmartin@gmail.com. And again, that's 2 M's in the middle. So it's rossmmartin@gmail.com. My middle initial is
We need to get
M.
you an Inside Carolina email.
I have one. I mean, it's Ross at Inside Carolina. I think it goes there too. I just never have used that one.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they're connected.
Okay.
Don, what do you think?
I like it. I'm a little scared. I like the idea that's kind of leading the conversation sort of thing. So
And look, the key part here is that we don't have all the answers.
We
It's
definitely
not like
don't.
I'm gonna give advice on marriage, like or like
Me neither.
raising kids, but like it'll be just kind of be funny or interesting to kind of learn our perspectives and create conversation. And look, the way Ryan Russillo does it is they'll have these questions and like situations and topics, and it'll go on show after show, and then people will start emailing in responses and giving advice on their own. We won't give names or anything. We'll just ask the question, talk about the topic, and it can be anything. We'll see where this goes. Could be dating, could be raising kids, could be career, could be, I'm going out one night or I'm going on a trip with buddies.
So
like,
what are we? All right.
You know,
So what are we doing on this episode since we don't have any questions?
this is just the primer. Yep. The next episode will be our first. Email your questions to rossmmartin@gmail.com. Any life advice. It can be funny, it could be serious, and it'll just be a way to create conversation. And we'll do that. Try to do that every other podcast or something. Go through a few, and we'll get Don and Ross's life advice. And what better way to live life than living it the way Don or Ross does with their advice?
Yeah, I hope you're getting advice elsewhere also.
Yeah.
This should be supplementary.
Correct. All right, awesome podcast, guys. 2 commitments for UNC. Another one we believe is coming by the time you listen to this one in Marcus Allen. We went through all the official visits from last weekend. The June recruiting period is now wrapped up. They're entering a dead period. Don, when's the next time players can visit?
July 25th.
Okay. Is there any evaluation coming up too?
Nope. It's just that last week of July is open for visits. You'll see some cookouts and barbecue stuff, just all these different things to try to attract recruits to campus. And then after that, we go into another long dead period.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to Giant T-Shirt. Thanks for listening to The Scoop, presented to you by Giant T-Shirt. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast, Inside Carolina Podcast Network, and subscribe on YouTube. We appreciate you listening.